Hello, Bob Wells here, and welcome back to the Undercurrent Stories podcast, where we dive deep into the hidden depths of our world, one fascinating guest at a time. Today, I'm joined by legendary Grammy Award-winning producer Stephen Lipson, the creative force behind iconic records from Annie Lennox, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Grace Jones, and Hans Zimmer, and many, many more. In this episode, you'll discover how classic songs were really made, what makes a great producer, and the unexpected moments that shaped music history. It's insightful, surprising, and full of stories you won't hear anywhere else. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the show, Stephen.
Hi. Nice to be here.
When I wrote that intro, I think we mentioned before the show, I did some research, and it was really what I should leave out. There's a whole host of various artists that you've produced. I kept it as short as possible.
Well, interestingly, during the... I don't know why I said interesting. It's probably boringly. During the pandemic, I got into this habit of writing. Every Sunday, I would write something and post it on social media about what I was listening to that day, or a record I'd made, and I really got into this. I thought it was quite an interesting way of keeping in touch with all the people I know, and quite a lot of them got in touch with me, a lot of friends, and said, "Oh, why don't you put all this in a book?" And I thought, I can't put this in a book because it's all the stuff I leave out that's interesting, with the exception of bless whoever it might be, any artists who have died. You know, it's the negative things that people find interesting more than the positive things. Jimmy Page, for example, I gather has written an autobiography to be released on his death.
I heard that.
Yeah, I find that quite... That's quite smart.
Yes, yeah. There must be lots of stories about people who are still alive that he's waiting for that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. He'd get into trouble, as would I.
Yeah.
So there's one artist who unfortunately died, who I can afford to be a little bit negative about, but everyone else, it's a tough thing. Yet there's always something negative. I made I don't know why I'm just rambling, but it doesn't matter. I'll just cut it out. I made a couple of albums with a group called Simple Minds.
Yeah.
And my engineer and I were staying up in Scotland for months on end. And to begin with, we were sharing the house that they had with them. And it was very, very difficult. We finally ended up in cabins by the lock. The lot where they lived. And it was so much better. And I realized the reason it was better was because every night, as we'd go back to our quarters, we'd be swearing about the artist, like just letting off steam, really. And it was nothing personal.
No.
And then the next day, everything was okay. But when we were living with them, we couldn't say anything.
No, of course not.
I mean, yeah. It makes me think the amount of people who might say, "I could kill you,"
Yeah. It's those memories, and they very often turn into humour as you get older, don't they? When you look back at them.
Of course. Yeah.
So I like to try and keep the podcast chronological. Conversations aren't like that, but it would be nice just to start off, please, Stephen, if you could just tell us a little bit about your early life and how you got into music, and then what inspired you to be a record producer.
It's sort of a simple story. At the age of eight, my parents bought me an acoustic guitar on holiday. We were on holiday somewhere. And at around that time, my brother had an interest in drums, so he managed to acquire a drum kit. He's 5 years older than me. And so my musical education was 5 years advanced, really. And I played with my cousin. We, in bedrooms, he got a drum kit and the two of us made an awful noise. Then a couple of school pals started getting interested and we put a little group together and played at school concerts. And then I ended up, there were three of us who created a what I was thought of as a bedroom band, and we were really good. I acquired a tape machine, a Revox tape machine, and we'd make these demos, and the demos were great. And for some reason, we sent them off. I don't know what made me. It might have been the singer, actually. Sent them off to EMI, who offered us a deal. We were about 17 or 18 at the time. We were offered a record deal. But we didn't think the deal was good enough. Stupid people. And so they thought, well, if you're this difficult now, we're not interested. So we lost that deal. The two guys I was working with both went on to get their own deals. I didn't, but ended up helping them make their records, sort of. And in the meantime, I was doing a lot of work, not a lot of work. I had a job, but in days off, I'd do jingle sessions for a friend who one day I said to him, yeah, I always think my guitar sounds terrible. I wish I knew what those guys in the other room were doing, because maybe I could help myself and make it sound better. And he said, well, that's funny. I've just bought a building, and if you fancy, we can go halves on a studio. And I said, well, how would that manifest itself? He said, well, I'll give you £15,000 in a year, and at the end of the year, I want a working studio.
And where was this?
I would have been 22. So I don't know when that was. 76, 77, so around then.
Pretty young still to taking on something like that.
And what a great opportunity, except I didn't have any money to live for some time, because £15,000 to equip and build a studio wasn't a great deal. So I found some dodgy builder and I got hopeless equipment. And to the day, after we shook hands on this, we'd signed contracts by this point, was the first jingle. And I had no idea what I was doing, only what I'd sort of gathered during the building of this enterprise. I didn't know what microphones to buy. I didn't know about cabling or ducting, or I didn't know anything. So that year was a learning experience of how to build and run and equip a recording studio in a year.
I think there's something to be said for being naive at certain times, as opposed to, if you'd sat down with a big book and written down loads of notes about how you're going to do it, you could have been 2 or 3 years doing that before you've actually started it, if you did. But actually, if you take something on and go through it, okay, you take a few knocks, but almost the universe sort of comes along with you.
Yeah, but I tell you, the thing I think I learned from that is micro and macro. And this manifests itself all the time, actually, in my life. When to micromanage and when to look at the bigger picture in whatever. But, I'm not any great shakes, but I do know that when I'm working on, say, a movie, that there's a time to micro, look at the minutiae, and a time to zoom out. And I know a lot of people who aren't able to zoom out.
Is that where? Sorry, is that where?
No, go on.
Perhaps is that where you could be so involved with the technology element of it at a very early stage before you've actually sort of seen the creativity and the overall picture? Is that where you're coming from?
Yeah, yes, kind of. But the way I think of it is, what are we doing here? If I am working with an artist, which I'm doing less and less, just because of, I suppose, my age, whatever, and also my desires. My first thought is, who would be interested? Why would anyone be interested in this? And that's quite a macro thought. I'm not thinking about the songs or the hair or the attitude or the voice. I'm just thinking, why? What is this? Who would buy this? Who would listen to it? And that's, I suppose, quite a macro thing. If I'm working on a film score, the guys who do what I do are very involved in small detail of this. world, like the violin in the orchestra. I'm not all that bothered. If I need to be, I am. But generally, I'm more interested, well, there's an orchestra. It's I'm looking at the bigger picture of things, I suppose. And I think that came from not having any training, probably.
So you didn't get bedded down into one particular facet.
I had no one telling me, this is how it's done. This is what you have to do. You have to be this, that, yeah. I just figured it out, which doesn't bode well for the people who are working for me, because I have not a clue how to... I'd make a bad teacher. I think that's the truth.
In the research that I was doing and some of the stuff I've listened to, one of the things I found interesting was that as well as being a producer, obviously you were a guitarist first. How much do you think that being able to play an instrument has sort of helped in your overall production skills?
Oh, hugely. Absolutely hugely. I know there are an awful lot of record producers who can't play, and maybe that's their strength, which is fair enough. But from my perspective, it's helped me like 100%. The ability to talk to musicians in a language that it's like a short cut, really. We can talk very quickly about stuff. I can hear having said all this, I can't read music, but if I'm working with an orchestra, I can hear, there's a note you're playing there. What key are we in? We're in C. All right, that E that you're playing, it actually, you are flat. I'll know what the note is. I'll know how to express what I'm trying to say. It helps enormously.
Yeah, it must do. I was listening to one of your first songs that became a hit, the Sniff and the Tears song, Driver's Seat. And that still sounds really fresh. There's a lot of records that came out probably in the late 70s and 80s. They've got a particular sound on them that they all copied. And everybody had that same sound. But that particular song, when I heard it still sounds very fresh. Was that in the intention at the time? Do you try and keep things raw?
I've no idea. I didn't know what I was doing. Literally didn't know what I was doing. So much so that when we were mixing, do I need to explain what mixing is?
I think so, yeah, because it's an interesting... I'm a musician myself, Stephen. We didn't mention that at the beginning. But there are other people, perhaps some listeners,
who
may have
know.
Exactly. So I think it's useful to.
Yeah. So when you're recording and making music, I mean, for the purposes of this, we'll talk about a record. You basically what you're doing is acquiring all the elements over the days, weeks, months, whatever it might be. Elements being rhythm, which is probably drums. Guitars maybe, keyboards maybe, basses, voices. You acquire them all, and they're all in a file. A file, I suppose a file, you call it a file nowadays, on a hard drive, and you play them all at the same time. And mixing is when you make all those elements sound like a record. It's, in a way, that it's the haircut. It's probably more than the haircut, it's hair and makeup. It's probably even more than hair and makeup. It's hair, makeup, and a little bit of plastic surgery, all done at the same time. So when mixing that song, Driver's Seat, when they recorded it, the guitar players, two of them, really good guitar players, played their parts all the way through, from beginning to end. And when mixing it, I had this weird idea that on recording consoles, these great big devices you see in front of recording engineers, there's what's called a mute button. And the mute button does exactly what it says. It mutes whatever it's related to. So these two guitar tracks had mute buttons. And I'd never really figured what the mute... I knew it muted things, but I didn't relate it to mixing. I didn't realize... It's so obvious, but I didn't realize that you could mute things in the mix. And I suddenly had this revelation of muting the guitars whenever the guy was singing, and then unmuting them when he stopped singing. And that created the sort of pattern of the song. So the whole thing went just down to piano when he's singing. And as he finishes singing, I'd hit these buttons, open the 2 channels, and you'd hear the guitars. And being musical, I could do it in time because these guitar parts weren't on a beat. They were sort of anticipating. One was anticipating at one point, the other at another point. And because I was musical, I could hear them in my head and hit the buttons at the right points and mute and unmute these guitar parts, which sort of made the track in a way.
Yeah.
If I'd have left them in, it would have been dead boring.
Yeah.
So it was a real revelation to me.
And just talking about musicians themselves, when you do something which I guess is pretty creative and you're somewhat changing their original idea, what type of reactions do you receive? And in particular on that case, what did they say when you did that?
I don't know, they were there. But
Right.
generally they don't mind.
No.
There was a one band I worked with, it doesn't matter who they were, a huge band. And I had the same thought, this was years later, in fact it wasn't that long ago, doing the same thing, pulling the keyboard part out after and make it an intro part rather than an integral part all the way through the song. And the whole band, everyone in the band went, yeah, oh, that's great, apart from the keyboard player, who said, oh, I don't know about that, it's the main part. I said, I know it's the main part, but it sounds so much better when it comes in, having been out. Oh, no, I have to think about that. You have to give me a week or so. So, whatever. I gave him a week or so, and then it was fine.
Yeah.
He sort of got the point. It's interesting with, it might be like everything. Things sound better when they haven't been in. Does that make sense?
Less is more?
That's another way of putting it. It's like if you like smoked salmon, if you eat it every day, it's kind of a bit naff. If you have it once a month, it's gorgeous. It's a bit like that. It's the same thing with singers. Singers fascinate me. A lot of them love stretching notes. They'll sing a line and hold the note for ages. And I, well, if it's appropriate, will suggest to them, might be an idea to stop, sing the melody and then stop. So there's a gap. And they're thinking, well, why? I can, sing much longer and it'll be, like I can show off, basically. Yeah. And my point to them is, well, if you leave a gap, you'll sound better because then you'll come back in. Instead of relentless noise of you, there'll be and then if you think about all the great vocals, Elton John is the prime example of someone who keeps every line's really curt, short. He sings his line and he shuts up as soon as possible.
Working with Hans Zimmer on the cinematic stuff, what is the approach like working on film music as opposed to working with an artist or a band?
Every film's different.
Yeah.
So there are some films where I've been in the room creating the whole thing with him, and other ones where I have 3 weeks to put the whole thing together, other ones where I have 2-3 months to put it together. And in a way, they're dying, but the most interesting. Because what would happen is I would get what's called a synth master. It's basically a demo, but the demos now are the cue. They are the pieces of music, just without orchestra.
Yeah.
And of course, not all film scores have orchestras, but majority do. It's a timeless noise, whereas synthesizers are a bit of the moment. So orchestras tend to be used. So I will get these huge files, they're called synth masters, and we'll spend a while making them sound as good as I can. And we're talking about up 70 pieces of music, maybe, a lot of music. And then as the project approaches its climax, they'll score. And again, my experience is a lot happens in London at Abbey Road or Air. And I will get these orchestras as they're recording them. So I will be in my studio and they'll do a bunch of recordings in the morning session, and then they'll prep them, put them in shape and send them to me over the internet, and I'll incorporate what they've done into what I've done up to that point.
Oh, so there'll be a separate engineer or producer at Abbey Road recording the orchestra?
Yeah, a whole bunch. It's a huge deal.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Recording a 96 people, whatever it is, a big orchestra on, as I said, 70 pieces of music. And they'd like to break it down so they don't record everyone at the same time. It's an amazing feat to do that. And these composers, they sit in the room listening to what's going on and commenting and shaping it as it's recorded for anything up to 3 weeks.
Wow.
All day. It's heavy work.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Do you ever sit in on these sessions?
No, I get really bored as it happens.
Yeah.
I love the end result, but sitting there listening and having... The other thing is that it's too many cooks. What am I going to do? I'll sit there and say, oh, that bit, whatever. It's not fair because they've got their own thoughts and it's time sensitive and very expensive. So being there isn't a great idea.
So when the files come to you basically incorporate them with the work that you've done, and you'll be, for example, things like balancing, volumes, EQ, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And there will be fake orchestra already.
Yeah.
And I'll have to make a call as to whether the real orchestra replaces it. I have them both in together. Whatever it is that makes it sound as good as it can be.
Hi, it's Bob here, just a quick interlude. Hope you're enjoying this episode, and if you would like to hear more interesting interviews, we have over 150 episodes to date with many fascinating guests talking about a wide variety of topics which include music, history, philosophy, fitness, food and drink, adventure, contemporary culture, and many, many more. I'm sure there's something that you'd really enjoy. So all you need to do is just visit undercurrentstories.com or search Undercurrent Stories in any of the podcast platforms. And now back to the show. Do you think with technology, the way it's progressed over the last sort of 30 or 40 years, is there a lot of difference between a real orchestra and a top-of-the-range sound coming from a synthesizer?
I don't know how to answer that. Yes, there is a difference. Does it make a difference? Is a different question, really, isn't it? Does it make a difference? I don't know. Because I think that makes me think of something else, actually. I remember a few years ago, this sort of answers your question. A few years ago, I was working, I worked with an engineer for 25 years. And one day, we were mixing a song, which he was primarily doing. And I had to go out, and I said to him, the bass, the low end on this song sounds terrible. It's too muddy. There's no clarity to it. Look, I have to pop out for half an hour. Can you look at that? And I'll come back and let me see what you've done. So I went out, did whatever I did, came back, and he said, yeah, what do you think of this? And he played it to me, and I said, great, that's a lot better. And then he went, well, actually, I haven't done anything. And, but it sounded a lot better to me because he'd said he'd fixed it. So I wonder, just relating that to your question, whether recording an orchestra, I'm not, in certain circumstances, I would question who it's for. Whether it makes any difference to the public, I don't know. It would make a difference to the director because he's getting an orchestra on his film. And the composer may be the same. What I'm saying, it's hard. I'm saying it's hard to really know how to answer that.
Yeah, no, I think I know what you're saying. And just a question for any listeners that may be a bit in the dark about it. What's the difference between an engineer and a producer?
Well, maybe to answer that, you have to wind back a few years, because now I could ask the same question. But as the terms you're thinking of, the engineer is the person who physically records the sound. He's not deciding what it's going to be. He's sticking microphones up and making sure all the recording levels are correct. And if any adjustments have to be made, he'll do it. And he keeps the whole session running smoothly, probably with an assistant who's running about, making sure everything's plugged in and working. And the producer is the guy who would say, I don't know, you've got the part right yet. For example, the producer would do a whole load more. When I was seriously busy in the 90s or whenever, I might be just talking to the artists on the way home in the car. That might be an important part. Trying to get ideas into their head without them knowing, or suggesting something that they're going to reject, but the next day they'll come in and suggest it to me. Or I don't know if this is true, but someone once told me that the guy who produced Queen's early records, he was a great chef and he used to cook them dinner. And that was a large part of his input. So he made the sessions go really well because they were excited about dinner. And Jimmy Iovine, who is a sort of legendary record producer who started Beats and sold it to Apple, he, I know this because I worked on with Simple Minds after him. And Jim Kerr, the singer, used to say he made a great phone call. He'd sit phoning all the radio stations. He knew all the people at the radio stations. So that was a really valid way to produce a record, because he had a team making the record for him, and his job was to make sure it was a hit.
Rewinding a little bit, you obviously did a lot of work with Trevor Horn.
Yeah.
What did you learn from Trevor?
Oh, huge amount. Huge amount. I learned positive and negative, but generally extremely positive. What was important? I had no idea what was important before I was working with him. I didn't realize the importance. This is going to sound so naive, because I was in my 30s when I started. I didn't realize the importance of rhythm and the vocal. I'd concentrate on everything else, the guitar parts, the keyboards, the rhythm. Oh yeah, we've got a beat, that'll do. But he showed me in no uncertain terms the importance of those two things. That people really, the vocal should lead, and the rhythm is so important. And so that alone, and also to not be afraid of dumping the work you've done.
Oh, what? And starting over?
Starting over, yeah. Which to this day is still hard, but it's an interesting lesson. He said it's interesting. I might take one idea. That was it. He just threw it away like it was meaningless in a way.
Yeah. We've had a huge change in technology over the last 30, 40 years, and you've been in the middle of all that with recording. How have you seen things change? So there's a few questions with this. How have you seen things change? What new technology are you using? What have you discarded? And how do you see the future?
I'm completely up to I live on the bleeding edge. Always have, always will. I love it. I love the technology. Yet it hasn't helped at all. But then I would put forward an argument that, is it 2001, A Space Odyssey, where the ape picks up a club? Have you seen that film?
I have seen it, but I don't remember that bit.
I don't really remember it at all. But Also's Sprach Zarathusa's playing, and the ape picks up this club, and it's the moment, when the ape becomes the man, maybe. I can't really remember. Yeah. But from that point on, it strikes me that everything that we have accomplished is to make our lives easier.
Yeah.
Everything. And not for the better, really. I mean, when you think, God, I said this to one of the Frankie Goes to Hollywood boys, and he made a funny remark. But if you think about it, everything we've done we've done nothing. We've just made our lives easier. That's all we've done. To what end? You know, if I look at dolphins or whatever, the animal kingdom, what do? They procreate, they eat and sleep and whatever, and then get killed or die, or it's very straightforward. They don't need all the things we need. And I don't know, we're not great shakes, really. If someone looks at the globe, we're a bit of a mess, I would say. Yeah, so then you ask about music technology. It's fantastic. I don't know how good it is. You know, I don't know that having something that can figure chords out for you is good. I don't know that. Do you know what splice is? It's a thing you join, and there are loads of loops, and you pay a monthly fee, and you can just incorporate the loops into your music. So you don't even have to write anymore. You just listen to, oh, I love that rhythm track. I'll have that. Love the bass there. I'll have that. Oh, keyboards, they're nice. I'll have that. And even vocals. I'll have that. Put the thing together. There's your song. I don't know how. Is that good? I don't know. Who can say?
Very
what do you think?
Well, I think it's very subjective. What do I think? I think on the positive side, I think the ability for somebody, let's say me, for example, to get hold of Ableton Live and create loops and make some music, you know, if you're anybody who's slightly creative, it's a great way of doing it. And you can actually come out with something at the end. But it's like anything, isn't it? You know, there's nothing quite like playing in a band with one instrument where it's organic. You're having a laugh with other people. So it's the social thing, being part of a group. There's nothing quite like that. And
do you know how many songs go on to Spotify every day?
I was told. Bruce Woolley told me.
I think it's over 100,000.
Yeah.
I tell you what I miss. Not miss, but in a way it was more interesting when there were gatekeepers and when there was payola. Because payola, for the most part, represented someone who thought, this is so good, I'm going to invest a whole load of money in it. And I think that's okay. Struck me as quite a good thing. Certainly for me, if I made a record that the record company thought was good enough to invest in, go for it. And there weren't that many records released, so the chance of having a hit were pretty good. Now I'm not sure what a hit is. Now I'm not sure what music is, actually, you know, relative to everything else that's going on.
So for me, I was one of the, whatever it was, 19 million people on a Thursday night watching Top of the Pops. It was part of your life. I'm not sure it is anywhere. And if you ask me what's number one, I've no idea, because
I don't think anyone has.
No, I mean, there's everything.
Did you see any Glastonbury? You did?
Yeah, I mean, Glastonbury's interesting because being of the older generation, it's very easy for me to go and watch on iPlayer and watch the people, the artists that I traditionally have liked, like Rod Stewart, Franz Ferdinand, Gary Newman. What I make myself do to, you know, keep the brain cells going is actually make myself watch a little bit of every artist there. And I'm about halfway through at the moment, but I find it quite interesting. Yes, because you discover people that you would not normally have heard.
Yeah.
So I did watch Glastonbury.
I found it quite interesting. Two headline acts that I saw, Charlie XCX and Olivia Rodrigo. I think I'm right in saying a lot of miming going on and just basically miming to their albums. And not quite, but sort of. Headlining Glastonbury. It was just interesting. It's where we are, I suppose. And I'm not being negative about it. And also I'm exaggerating to make the point. Because obviously they have live mics and do stuff and they can dance and they look good. And, you know, some of their records are quite amazing.
Yeah.
But Glastonbury, whatever. I don't know. It's just an interesting thing.
What advice would you give if we've got any listeners would like to get into the music business in music production?
You keep your day job. It's a hobby now. If I hadn't had success, I would have to have a job. Without doubt. I'm making a record at the moment, and it's not a living, that's for sure.
Really? Yeah.
Nah.
But you
Can't
must,
see it.
I mean, you must really enjoy what you do. You must,
I love it.
Exactly. You're very passionate about it.
Yeah, it's like the perfect combination of everything for me. I love computers, I love technology, I love music, I love people, problems, and it's all mixed up into one great lump of stuff that gets on my wife's nerves. Yeah.
And I guess that when you actually finish something, do you sometimes go back a bit like an artist and sort of say, yeah, I wish I'd done that, or I could have done
Never
that?
listen.
Oh, you never listen?
Nah.
Oh, right. Once it's done, you're on to the next thing.
Done. Yep.
Oh, right. Yeah. You must derive a sense of pride, though.
Nah, not really. But that's something I learned from Trevor. The first thing I ever did with him was Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And the first song was Relax. Did Relax. It came out. It took ages getting anywhere. And then it got to number one. And at the point it got to number one, we were trying to figure the next single, which was called Two Tribes. And we were right in the middle of it. And someone ran into the control room where we were working and said, Relax has gone to number one. And Trev looked up and he went, oh, that's great. Great. Okay. Anyway, and then heads down and on we got. That was it.
So quite stoic about it.
Absolutely no joyous moment at all, because that was then and we were here. And I tend to think that's quite an interesting way to be, especially seeing the amount of people who win awards and then lose it for a year or two immediately afterwards. So it's just what you're doing.
So I suppose if things collapsed, if something went wrong in the studios, Trevor would be quite stoic about it and say, yeah, okay, well, we just need to move on and do it again or something.
Completely. Yeah. I learned that from a guy, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he was working at the studio I was working. He was in a room, beautiful room, but it had a leak. And I'd walk in and say hello to him every day. And one day I went in, it was raining really badly. There was a bucket in the middle of the console with the water dripping into it. And I said, oh, this is terrible. Do you want me to, can I help? He said, nah, we'll just work around it. I thought, there you go. Yeah. Great. He wasn't bothered at all. Fix it when I'm not here. Yeah,
it'll come out. It'll be sorted in the end. While we were talking on that previous bit, I had the song "Relax" in my mind. It's a very catchy song, and there was a guitar solo towards the end of it. Was that you on that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how many songs that people might know have got you on guitar on it?
Nearly everything I've ever worked on. Yeah. Might as well. I enjoy playing. I'll come up with an idea. Could be very simple. It's generally pretty simple. I'm not great.
Are you still
just do it?
Do you still play the guitar?
Yes, rarely.
Right.
I have loads of them.
Yeah.
And treasure them, but things have changed, So yes, I do, but just tinkering, really. Anyway, they're better people than me.
Have you been playing in bands at all?
Yeah.
Are you in a band at the moment?
No, we're defunct because one member's moved to LA. No, it was good. We were called The Producers, and we made this album and it was good fun. Did loads of pub gigs, played the Albert Hall, actually. And then we did a few big ones, but mainly pubs, and loved it. We had a great time. Festivals, enough now, I think.
What's one piece of studio equipment or software that you couldn't live without?
My laptop. I say that because it's the ultimate instrument now. You can sort of do anything. If I just had a laptop, I could make records. I could mix film scores. I could do anything on it. I can watch TV on it, get the news, play games, create films, photos, music, everything. It does everything. It's the most amazing device, I think.
What are you currently working on?
Two girls I've worked with for years who were in a group called Propaganda. And we did an album couple of years ago, it did really well. Ex-propaganda, because there is no propaganda. And it was the best fun. And so I'm doing I've just finished a load of stuff with Hans, and now I'm doing this album with the girls. It's a labour of love. It'll be done when it's done.
Yeah.
Going away on holiday soon, so I won't be working then. You know what I mean? We dip in and out.
Apart from music, what do you do outside of music?
Well, it encompasses everything, really. And photography, I love photography, but haven't had much time or space to do that for ages. And family, that's it for me. I love spending time with the family and photography and music. But music is sort of everything. It's research, it's working, it's mending. It sort of covers a myriad of hobbies all in one for me.
This has been a fantastic conversation, Stephen, and it's really interesting to learn more about you and the music that you've made over the years. So thank you ever so much for coming on the show.
Well, I hope you've got something